Welcome to the Believeland Prep podcast playoff preview. I'm joined by Lucas Cochran, a soon-to-be high school intern here with Believeland Media. He's going to be shadowing me at the Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy game where they visit the Chardon Hilltoppers in Week 11. Lucas, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Lucas. I've done broadcasting journalism for about 2 years now. I specialize in sports in the Cuyahoga Valley area. That's mostly what I cover.
All right. And good thing that we most of you who know me and Mike covered the Walsh Jesuit Lake Catholic game a couple weeks ago. He helped me get ready for the Walsh side of things. I helped him get ready for the Lake Catholic side of things. Obviously, us having seen our respective schools a number of times. He knows a little bit more about CVCA than I do, but I know a good chunk about Chardon. And so just to kind of talk about, the seasons as a whole, Chardon sits at 7-3, coming off a big win over Riverside. What was kind of drew up to be the game for the WRC, winner take all for the conference. A couple upsets in week 6 over Chardon by Kenston, and then a week 8 thriller at Kenston where they took down Riverside. It's kind of all but solidified up until last Friday, the conference. Kenston won it outright, going undefeated in conference. Chardon did move up in the standings as far as conference goes, going from 3-2, leaping Riverside as Riverside's 2 losses came in the conference. So Chardon's only conference loss was to Kenston. So obviously, 1 conference loss is better than 2. And with the win, Chardon made a leap in the playoff standings as well. They were hovering around like 11-12. They leaped to 7 to now host the playoff game. The seniors get 1 more playoff game. At minimum, crazy upsets can happen, and they could host again. But that we will worry about next week. As far as last week was concerned, it's just Chardon doing what they do. Will Francis, 133 yards and 17 carries, 303 passing for 13 yards. Andrew Bruce capped off his regular season senior year with 103 rushing yards and a touchdown on just 9 carries. Vinny Colombi twice pounded it into the end zone from the 1-yard line to score, and then a 2-point conversion from Drago Vuyaclia added on to the Hilltopper lead as they won 24-16 over the Riverside Beavers. And what do you got on CVCA?
CVCA capped off the season on a 5-game winning streak. Pretty solid. They had a huge rushing attack all season. They didn't even touch 100 passes on the year. The quarterback, Charlie Levac, was a huge player. In the running game, their star running back, Ellis Scranton, he had a great season. He touched 1,216 yards. He also had 12 touchdowns. We're hoping to see a big game from him and Chardon.
It looks like it's going to be kind of the battle of, whose running game is better and whose running defense is better. I'll be honest, from what I've seen from Chardon this year, their passing defense is kind of where they lack, but it's also not bad. Their rushing defense is really, really good. They held Sean Patrick, one of the best running backs in Ohio, to under 100 yards. I think they held him to under 90. I think he finished with 87 yards on 20-something carries. So that's 3 to 4 yards a pop. That's not, 4 is not bad on 1 carry, but over a progressive of 20 carries, it's not, that doesn't jump out at you. So we know that their ground defense is solid, and I think that's going to be key on Friday. And I think it's going to be key for their success all year, because if you can make a team become one-dimensional, that's when you attack, and that's when you can win. Some teams have kind of been able to overcome it and still win. They lost to Tiffin Columbian 50-49, lost 14-10 to Bishop Watterson, and then the loss to Kenston, obviously. Chardon's ends the season on a 4-game winning streak. So 2 winning streaks coming into week 11 to, either advance or go home. It is win or go home.
It's a really solid matchup. It was definitely an interesting one. These two haven't faced off in a couple of years, if I'm right.
Yeah, it's and it's intriguing. CVCA obviously being 8-2 and Chardon being 7-3, but Chardon gets the host. I think strength of schedule gave Chardon the advantage when it came out to finals standings.
CVCA opened the year off losing the Streetsboro. They also took another L later in the season to Canton South.
Couple couple big losses too, multi-score losses. I mean, Chardon lost to 10 by Kenston, but I mean, a couple like a defensive score from Kenston really was the difference maker. A fumble recovery turned into a touchdown, and I mean, just little things like that can change the whole trajectory of a game, and I think it did. I mean, Chard was leading up to that point, and then the fumble recovery and touchdown, and then Kenston just added 10 more points on after that to come away with I mean a key signature win for that program, something they haven't beat Chardon in a while, and to win over your rival in the Battle of Geauga County is always a good thing, no matter when it comes, how it comes. Just the win is what matters. But as far as what we can expect to see, I think not a lot of passing from Chardon, obviously. It's something that they haven't done a lot this year as a whole. On this season, Will Francis has only attempted 64 passes, and you mentioned CVCA hasn't even thrown 100 passes as well. So we're going to expect it's going to be probably a fast-paced game. A lot of rushing, a lot of running, but just to kind of highlight some defensive players for Chardon. Alexander Ash, he finished with 8 tackles last week against Riverside. Finished the season with 105 tackles, total tackles, 65 solo, 8 sacks, and 21 tackles for loss. All of those categories lead the team. Austin Green, his partner linebacker, came in second in tackles. Total tackles sitting at 63. He had 5.5 sacks and 11.5 tackles for loss. Austin Lazinski, defensive lineman, 13.5 tackles for loss. Maddox Sansabello finished with 10.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. So, I mean, really everybody on this Hilltop defense does a little bit of something. Andrew Bruce, AJ Bruce, he goes by both. He finished the season with 3 interceptions, and he's kind of had a string of games consecutively with interceptions. Caleb Hewitt led them with 12 pass breakups. Andrew Bruce finished right behind him at 10. So at times, yes, their pass defense can be their weakness, but it's not like, they're giving up 350 passing yards a game. It's, like short completions turned into big plays, and then like maybe one big passing play here or there. And that's what it was against Kenston. It was one big pass play, a 51-yard touchdown pass from Carlton Bach to Dylan Krupp to give them the lead early on in the fourth quarter. And I mean, Carlton Bach wasn't having a super efficient game. He finished the game with 11 incompletions. So it's not like he was going, completion. It was a lot of incompletions, and that pass defense it's strong, but it is the weakest part of their defense. Their linebackers are stellar, and I mean they got athletes top to bottom. I mean, even probably some of the guys who can fill in are also athletes. They rotate defensive linemen. They have certain packages for certain downs and distances. Their pass rush is good. They were getting pressure on Mikey Maloney all night on Friday. They were delivering some big hits. Obviously, it was a rivalry game against Riverside, so you bring a little bit of extra juice and fire coming into those games. And I mean, they were just hitting. And I think they were head hunting, if there's a word to put to it. Alexander Ash was delivering big blows all evening long. Kenneth Freehall added in a couple of big hits. And when I say hits, I mean, when the two met, it was a stone wall. And, the Riverside offensive player was getting driven back immediately after contact. They weren't giving up yards after contact. And just to kind of follow up with their rushing defense, Mikey Maloney is a big-time dual-threat quarterback in Northeast Ohio, probably one of the better ones in the area. He only got free 3 to 4 times. One of them did set up a touchdown, but none of them were game changers, really. That touchdown made it 24-16 in the fourth quarter. It wasn't like a game-tying or a game-winning rush to set up the touchdown type deal. So I think a big thing for Chardon is they really have to limit the penalties. They didn't seem awful on Friday, but against Kenston, they had a good number of penalties. I think they had 10 penalties early on against Tiffin Columbian that really probably led to the loss. And also, Chardon gave up the most points they have probably given up in the last decade at 50. But also, I mean, scoring 49 points against one of the top teams in Division III is a testament in itself, but you also can't give up 50 points. You give up 50 points, you might not win a football game. You can hang around, but 50 points is a lot of points. And but since then, their defense has been, stellar. besides giving up 31 to Kenston, they haven't even allowed anything close to that, only giving up 16 to a high potent offense in Riverside. And I was kind of going into the game, I was like, what's going to give? Good defense, good offense, Chardon, Riverside, what's going to give? And that Chardon defense gave it all they got and really shut down that Riverside offensive attack, really all over the place. It pitched a shutout in the first half, and it took Riverside up until the third and fourth quarters to get scores. So it's going to be, a battle of two similar teams. No really defensive statistics you told me from CVCA, but I'll kind of let you give your side of the story.
CVCA seemed to have a decent pass defense. I mean, they had 8 interceptions on the year. Like, besides that, there was nothing on them. And their scores, they had a couple shutouts on the season. They had like 3 or 4 shutouts. They had 3 games where they allowed more than 20 points, one of them being a 56-point game against Canton South where they lost. Getting shutouts, the defense is impressive when they come to play.
And well, you touched on some of the shutouts. Well, Chardon held Mayfield to 7 points, South to 0, and East Lake North to 0 points. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like East Lake North and Willoughby South and Mayfield are, superstar opponents, but when you can hold your opponent to, one score or no scores is, that's impressive. Pitching 2 shutouts, that's impressive. No matter who it is, and then only holding Mayfield to 7 points. As I mentioned, they gave up 20 to St. Francis in week 4, 10 to Avon Lake, 50 to Tiffin Columbian, and they pitched a shutout in week 1 against West Geauga. And some have kind of considered that probably maybe their ugliest win of the season. Despite 35-0 looks pretty, but it sounds like a lot of penalties and still a lot of lingering things, and the biggest one is the penalties. I know that they're a disciplined team and they're battle tested, so I know that they know how to win, but it's kind of still trying to figure out how to limit the penalties. And it's stupid ones. It's holdings, it's false starts, it's personal fouls, just kind of penalties you don't need to see happen, and you can't have happen, especially, I guess they kind of got lucky. You escaped conference play 4-1 after the loss to Kenston. And you came out of week 6 sitting at 3-3 at 500. It's been a very long time since that's happened, since Chardon's had 3 losses in a season. 2019 was the last time they had, anything more than 2, and they finished with 4. And their last loss coming in, I believe it was week 12 of the playoffs. I looked back a little bit just to kind of see how long it had been. But you think what happened the next years after that? They went back-to-back in state titles, 27-1 over 2 years. Obviously only 27 games because 2020 was a little bit shorter, only having played 11 games, or was it like 12 games that they played in 2020? So going 11-1 that year, and then 16-0 the next year to complete the back-to-back. They got eliminated by Canfield last year. They were just a couple rounds short of, making the postseason, and they had some changes coming into this season. Will Francis didn't play quarterback last year. Alex Henry graduated, and now, Will Francis, takes the helm at quarterback. And, it's 2 different playing styles between the 2 quarterbacks. I heard Coach Mitch Hewitt talk about how, Alex Henry was kind of the put my head down, run you over type of quarterback. And he was a little bit taller than Will Francis. Will Francis is not super tall in stature, but Francis is fast. If he gets into open space, he is got to be one of the hardest players to catch in Northeast Ohio. He, excuse me. He hits that next gear, and once it's him one-on-one with a linebacker or a safety or a corner, he's going to win the race. Unless there's 3 guys that are chasing him, and one can catch him. If it's one-on-one, it's off to the races, and you're not going to catch him. It's wave the checkered flag, because Will Francis is insanely fast. And in a year, all of a sudden, starting quarterback for the Chardon Hilltoppers, and he's thrived in that role. Now, you touched on how the pass defense of CVCA is kind of a key for them. 8 interceptions on the year. Francis has thrown 4. He's only thrown one touchdown on the season. And as far as leading receivers goes, Leo Columbi, the man headed to Miami. He's a 3-star safety. He committed as a safety. 10 receptions for 152 yards on the year. Caleb Hewitt, 8 catches, 139 yards. Drago Vuyaklea, 6 receptions, 53 yards, and the lone touchdown through the air. And then AJ Bruce has 6 catches for 51 yards. So it's kind of a running back by committee as far as, the running back room or who's going to get carries. It's Will Francis, it's AJ Bruce, it's Hewitt, Vinny Columbi, that is, Drago Vuyaklea, and even Trayton Allgood, who seems to probably be Francis's predecessor coming in next year. I think the kid's only a freshman or sophomore, so it's going to be a young a young team as a whole next year. Chardon has 37 seniors, and when I told that to Coach Baldassare and Coach Gibbons on Saturday at Lake Catholic, they're like, I don't even have 37 guys dressing this varsity game. I'm like, yeah,
it's crazy.
That's a wild number. I mean, I believe it was Baldassare who said that. Like, yeah, I don't even have 37 guys dressing varsity for this game, and it's a testament to how many kids want to come play football for Chardon. It was their senior night, and I swear to God, between the football players and cheerleaders, I think it took like 30 minutes. Not literally, but it took a while. Oh my God, I apologize.
But speaking of improvements from year to year, 2 years ago, CVCA was just below 500, sitting at 5-6. Then the year before, they were 7-4. This year, they finally hit 8-2. I mean, last year, 2 of their 4 losses came to Northwest. They lost by double digits. This year, they won by 20. And another one was Orville. They lost by double digits, and this year they won by 20. I mean, those are huge improvements, along with a tight game last year with Tuslaw to now this year beating them 42-0.
So, I mean, it sounds like kind of on the come up. I mean, it looks like they're hitting where Chardon is, the stringing together consecutive years, and the teams that you would typically lose to, now you're kind of, blowing them out of the water, and just kind of those, mid-season confidence wins for your team. But also those are the most important games, because those are the games where, you have to fix, the little things. I think the Mayfield, Willoughby South, and Eastlake North games were probably key for Chardon. As I mentioned, they weren't super penalized against Riverside. And I think those 3 weeks after the Kenston loss, they cleaned up a lot of the little things that had plagued them all season and had been big in some of the losses that they've had. And I mean, that might have been probably the most complete win between offense, defense, and special teams. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but as far as special teams, Sam Sosrich, who has kind of struggled on field goals this year, he did kick a big one to put Chardon up 16-0 before the half, and then defensively pitching a shutout in the first half, and then offensively putting up 24 points on a solid Riverside defense. It's got some good names. They graduated a lot last year, so not as good as it once was, but it's still a capable defense for sure. And I mean, just to kind of look at the yard total, Chardon held Riverside to 215 total yards. Chardon had 315 to compare. And this blew my mind. Chardon held Willoughby South to 8 total yards in week 7. A negative 5 rushing yards. Held Bishop Watterson to only 163 yards. The most yards they gave up was 402 to Tiffin Columbian. Gave up 335 passing yards. The rushing attack from everybody is, it's not very effective. I mean, Avon Lake and Kenston were the only 2 teams to go over 100 yards on the ground against the Chardon defense. While St. Francis got 153, Kenston got 129. Both teams passed for over 100 yards against the Chardon defense, and those are 2 quality opponents. St. Francis is one of the best Division II teams in New York, and obviously we know how the Kenston Bombers are. They're a conference powerhouse. They're a Division III powerhouse. They're always in the playoffs. They're always competing. They just won a state title back in 2018, and that anyone from that team, even the freshmen, that is gone. But for Chardon, these seniors were freshmen and sophomores. AJ Bruce, notably, he took a big step forward in 2021, and when they implemented him into the offense, it took that offense to a whole new level en route to the championship. So this team is battle tested. So yeah, they might be a 7 seed, but I think them upsetting somebody is. I don't think it's that far
Not
out of the
far
stretch of the
fetched.
imagination. No, it's not at all. Obviously, they have to get there. You got to get past, CVCA first.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's crazy to consider Chardon the underdog anytime they play anybody, just because they're battle tested. I mean, this coaching staff has been around for a long time. I mean, this offensive coordinator has been there for ages. Minshew has been there for the better part of a decade. And he's got over 100 career wins since joining the staff, and I believe it's 2010. Um, so it's not like they're plugging in guys here and there. This is a group that's been together. They know each other, and this Chardon team, they're backed by the Chardon fans. I mean, they were roaring against Riverside. AJ Bruce ripped off a 43-yard touchdown run, and I swear to God, they broke the sound barrier. I was on the Chardon sideline, and it was loud. And I got to be honest, I really can't wait for you to experience that playoff vibe at Chardon Memorial Stadium. I haven't experienced it yet. But, Riverside and Kenston, those were playoff games. They had that playoff vibe. And obviously, being in the same region, Kenston and Chardon could meet again. It wouldn't be until probably week 13 if both teams make it there. But it would be a little bit before that happens. But it's a potential to happen last year. Chardon came away with a 10-7 win. So that'd be a fun one to watch, especially in the playoffs again after just the season that Kenston's had, and just kind of the story as a whole for Chardon. I mean, I've mentioned the penalties about 7,000 times today. Something you might not expect from a championship caliber team, especially with all the pieces that they have who were key in those wins. And I think Coach Hewitt is kind of harped on it on Friday post game is, you guys could have tucked tail and gave up on the season, but you didn't. You fought, and you found a way to make the playoffs, host a playoff game, and finish second in the conference despite the heartbreaker to Kenston. Like, you did all this. You could have tucked tail after losing to Tiffin Columbia. You could have tucked tail after losing to Bishop Watterson. You really could have tucked tail, getting your third loss in week 6 against Kenston, your rival, one of your biggest rivals. But then you come in, you win 3 in a row, you come into week 10 and you hand it to the Beavers, your legit number 1 rival, and you put Riverside in a position where now they're likely going to face Hoban around sooner between 3 and 4 seed. Nobody wants to play Hoban. Hoban wouldn't even want to play Hoban if they had a chance. And that's just the truth. Maybe Massillon, Washington would want to play Hoban, but anybody else, I don't think so. But that win, it did a lot. It shook up the standings, really, playoff seeding and conference seeding. Mm-hmm. So I'm expecting a good one. 2 similar teams. Chardon's just got to do the little things right.
It's gonna be an all-out rushing game. I'm curious to see if CVCA will pull a surprise. I mean, they played Triway High School later in the season and threw 9 completions on 10 passes and threw 201 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, Charlie Levac, they run a lot of play actions with him. I'm very curious to see how they might implement that in the red zone to throw off Chardon a little bit.
And you bringing that up is actually key because I think Chardon likely could counter with that because I know CVCA is going to see, the 1,000 rushing yards from the quarterback, the 400 rushing yards from 500 rushing yards from Bruce, the 400 from Vinny Colombi and Caleb Hewitt, and the 300 from Drago Vujiclia. They're going to see that and be like, this team's going to run the ball. They're going to see the 2 receivers over 100 receiving yards in the season and be like, meh. So, maybe you run the ball 4 straight plays and you pull out a play action, and who knows, you could have somebody wide open over the top. And, yeah, I think the play action is going to be something that's going to be used as a legit a weapon because these two teams specialize in
Oh
running,
yeah.
and that's going to be on the minds of the defensive coordinators. If these defensive coordinators are as good as the records say and the stats say, then yeah, they're going to be like, hey, expect anything. And it's a playoff game. Everything goes because it's win or go home. So I might even expect a flea flicker, maybe a running back pass or
I mean,
something.
like
I don't
what
know.
you were saying about that, CVCA, they got over 200 rushing yards at least every single game besides against Trilay. That is the only game they didn't. They hit 158 in that game, but they had a great rushing defense, which allowed them to unlock their passing game that game. And I'm very curious to see if Chardon stops their rushing game and they unlock that. But if Chardon locks up both, it's going to be a blowout. CVCA is going to have no answer to Chardon's defense if that happens. To mean,
Yeah, I agree with that. To be honest, you mentioned CVCA, a lot of games over 200 rushing yards. Only one game where Chardon held under 200, and that was 189 against Bishop Watterson. But Chardon averages 338 rushing yards a game, only 41 passing yards a game. Obviously, not a team that passes very much. But they average a total of 380 yards a game, and they only give up 192 yards a game. The defense is its greatest weapon. I mean, they say defense wins championships. If this Chardon team is gonna go back to states, back to Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, and win 3 of the last 4 Division III state titles, it's gonna be on the back of this defense, and they're just gonna have to let the offense do what it does. And when the offense isn't clicking, that defense, Alexander Ash, AJ Bruce, Logan Bryan on the defensive line, Kenny Freehoff, Maddox Sensabella, like those guys are gonna have to step up, and they're gonna have to play balls to the wall. I mean, and they have all season. They really have played lights out is probably the word, despite some of these stats kind of sticking out amongst the others. Against quality opponents, you're not always going to shut down quality opponents.
exactly.
And that's what you're going to be facing. So, I mean, Chardon's battle tested this season alone. You could take away this 2 state championships and be like, yeah, this is a whole new team. None of these kids played or even on the roster then. You could look at this season alone. They're battle tested.
Mm-hmm.
And even losing to Tiffin Columbian and Bishop Watterson, it's not like they got blown out. They lost by 1 to Columbian, and they lost by 4 to Bishop Watterson, 2 Division III powerhouses. So and again, they beat St. Francis, a Division II powerhouse in New York, who, 2-time state champions. So it's not like this season was a cakewalk. So they're battle tested this season alone, but that could also have its lingering effects. A lot of games where the starters didn't get to come out. I mean, I'm sure these starters probably played full games from besides maybe week 1. They probably didn't get to come out of a game until week 7. I mean, that's 5 games in a row of playing full. That's full games of football, full physical games of football, and then they had to do it again against Riverside and then Kenston as well. So, that's a total 6 games where your starters probably played the whole game, compared to Kenston. And not to talk about them too much, their starters have come out on halftime in like almost every game this year, except the Lake Catholic game, the Wishiaga game, but they went in like the backups went in like late third quarter ish. But I mean, most of the second half of the season, except Riverside and Chardon, it was all JV kids in the second half of the second half of those games. So if these two teams do see each other in a couple weeks, one side is rested, maybe not as battle tested, and that's nothing to take away from Coach Grubich. But on the other side, maybe one team that's worn out, but is one of the most battle tested teams in all of Ohio, competing with St. Ed's and Massillon, who have really, really tough schedules. I mean, they play each other. That's enough in itself.
St. Ed's always has, hands down, that team's got D1 talent all over. They got a great rushing attack, great passing attack. They're all around. That's a team that is always looking up to shake up the playoffs.
Well, before we kind of wrap it up, do you want to give like a score prediction, or who do you think's gonna win? The score is kind of hard, but who do you think's gonna come out on top?
I'm going to Chardon, and I'm definitely thinking Chardon's gonna win 42-17.
I'm not going to go that high on the score. I'm also not going to give a score because it's hard to predict a score just because so many things can happen. I mean, at any level of football, to be honest.
Well,
But I
yeah,
think Chardon, just off the fact that they're battle tested and this team finds a way to win hard football games if they don't shoot themselves in the foot. There's a big asterisk. If they don't penalize themselves, turn the ball over, what have you. Yeah, I think Chardon's going to come away and they're going to move on to week 12 and they're going to be, looking ready to play whoever it's going to be. It's easy for me to say I think Chardon's going to win because I've seen them a bunch this year. I mean, they're fresh in my memory. I just saw them less than a week ago time.
Yeah.
So, but I think, I think the home field advantage is going to play a key role. I wouldn't be surprised if that Chardon crazy student section didn't have to take up multiple rows in the stands behind the goalposts because they packed it out last Friday and against Kenston, and they're loud. Those Chardon faithful are loud, and yeah, I think Chardon's gonna find a way to win. But I'm not going to put anything past CVCA. It's not like they're unproven. It's not like they're 6-4 or 5-5 who just squeaked in. They're 8-2. They have a better record than the home team. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about it. But that's the best part about
the 8-2. I mean, CVCA knows how to score. They know how to close out. They every single game they scored at least 2 to 3 touchdowns a game. If they couldn't get a passing touchdown, they get a rushing touchdown. Couldn't get a rushing touchdown, they get a passing touchdown. They work it out. They know how to score.
Just to note, the penalties, Chardon has 87 total penalties for 791 yards on the season compared to their opponents.
Isn't that 35 over the national average or something I saw?
Maybe. But as far as their opponents go, 69 penalties, 587 yards. I mean, when you have almost 20 more penalties than your opponent,
that's rough. That is rough.
That is rough. But I mean, like I said, it's a good coaching staff, and if there's anything they're working on right now at practice, it's everything. I mean, anything that they've been penalized for, I know it's being addressed. I'm sure the videos have been replayed on film 1,000 times because those are the things that lose you playoff games. And I know this team has high aspirations, and I think they have the ability to get there. They just have to. I mean, penalties is the only thing they really have to clean up. As far as closing out games, Kenston was kind of their game to win up 21-14, but I mentioned a turnover. It was a snap that went in the hands of Will Francis, popped up in the air. Kenston linebacker just came in, took it out of his hands, and went 5 yards to the end zone. So kind of an unforced error. I mean, it hit him in the hands, and it just popped up, and then it became a 50-50 ball. Tiffin Columbian, I think that game was lost at the last second. Same thing with Bishop Watterson. I don't know. Chardon scored first, and then after that, it was mostly Bishop Watterson, despite a Sam Sausage field goal. But they did close out Riverside. Riverside made things interesting. Although Coach Boers elected not to call a timeout late in the fourth quarter, that would have so Chardon took a knee and wasted the clock. But Riverside had opportunities to score. Riverside started the second half with possession. Chardon came away with an interception. They didn't score, but their possession turned the defense got you the ball back, and the more possessions you can take away from your opponent, the better off you're going to be. And I think they did that. A lot of fumbles from Riverside, all recovered by the offense. So the ball was slick. It was rainy. So, that kind of stuff happens. Right now it's looking to be perfect for Friday. So maybe not a lot of fumblage going on. But as far as the rest of the game, I guess you can call them for Believeland Media, Marshawn Powers will be in Menor as they take on St. Ignatius. A rematch of an earlier game from this season where I think Menor escaped with a 16-14 win, I believe. The Godfather Kevin Sleds will be in Garfield at his alma mater as the Conneaut Spartans will make the haul to Garrettsville to take on the G-Men. And Michael Patterson will be at the home of Villa Angela St. Joseph. Their field just opened up on Friday. And They will be taking on University Schools. As you all know, me and Lucas will be at Chardon Memorial Stadium. 7 o'clock kickoff from Chardon. Is there any final thoughts on this? We got our predictions and everything. I think we previewed it pretty well. Kind of talk about what both teams do well and maybe some things that they have to clean up. Anything else you got?
I think we're good.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to this Believeland Prep podcast playoff preview of the Chardon Hilltoppers and the Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy. Oh, I blanked.
Blue Royals.
That's what it is. Thank you. The Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy Blue Royals. Thank you guys so much for watching. I have been your co-host, Cameron Palmer. With me is our soon-to-be Believeland media intern, Lucas Cochran. Thank you guys so much.